I agree, an unusually resonant narrative of the human condition and captures fairly deep-seated and universal emotions regarding our relationship with time, family, nostalgia, loss, absence. Familiar themes we all have encountered, the kind that make you instantly wistful. The second law of thermonuclear. Dynamics seems to constantly sit there, waiting for us to turn our heads so it can take effect, unraveling all our painstaking efforts. Entropy can really be a downer, whether in the physical features of a once well-tended house, yard and garden, leaving it in shambles and disrepair, or even just a Spartan lack of human warmth, like a neat but joyless yard with no flowers or shrubbery or signs of human care. Or entropy can creep in elsewhere too, even in the routines and disciplines that make up the contours of our daily lives. Shoddy living creates nondescript lives of mundane disorder. The human will and conscious effort, with a perceived goal and a purpose in mind, is needed to hold back the encroaching forces of chaos that otherwise unravel us too. Everywhere we notice the human touch, it seems to inspire, literally. In Latin, inspirare means to blow into, breathe upon, similar to respire, respirator, etc. It has to do with breathing, or being breathed into, the breath of life and all that. Ruach in Hebrew is commonly translated throughout English versions of the Bible as spirit, or even the Holy Spirit, but its original, literal meaning is more to do with breath and breathing. You would draw in Ruach into your lungs. The passage in Genesis about the breath of life breathed into the nostrils to create a living being. The Hebrew word there for breath was Ruach. In Luke 23:46, Jesus saying, "Into thy hands I commend my spirit," the original word for spirit, in Koine Greek, the language the New Testament was written in, despite the fact that the characters themselves spoke Aramaic as their native language, was pneuma. Pneuma, pneuma in Koine Greek, meant virtually the same thing as ruach, RVHA, in Hebrew, breath, spirit, even wind. And in Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke, it would have been the word ruha, pronounced ruokhy. It's interesting, though, that the rest of that verse goes, "And having said thus, he gave up the ghost." King James Version. Because. The exact same Greek word, pneuma, is translated first as spirit, and in that very next phrase as ghost, even though many sources assure us the word ghost was not meant in the more modern, disembodied spirit sense of the word, but rather in the concept of the life principle or animating force sense of the word. Now, there's also the interesting fact that the men on the team that created the King James Version of the Bible, 1604-1611, were all highly educated and respected scholars and men of letters, and their undertaking, done between 1604 and 1611, was contemporary with William Shakespeare in his prime, so they all surely would have been very acquainted with his work and style, to the point that they very likely tried to emulate him in many ways regarding the beauty of language and whatnot, approaching the sublime even. But as such, they certainly would be aware of the sense of the word ghost, as Billy Shakespeare famously employed the use of a ghost in the guise of Hamlet's own deceased father, roaming the grounds of their castle in Denmark, spilling the beans on his bro and Hamlet's stinky uncle. Bill Shakespeare used ghosts in Julius Caesar too, and Richard III, where Richard hallucinated the ghosts of those he'd killed. So the KJV's ghost very likely could have been the means as the disembodied spirit after all, whether the original text had anything to do with that or not, as both pneuma and ruach, as well as ruha, all could have actually been simply describing the literal breath in one's lungs. Well, no matter. These are topics for seminarians and theologians and dutiful members of Hair Splitters Anonymous, hermeneutically dissecting the text like obsessive 1700s doctors in academic medical theaters after just discovering the glories of scalpels, microscopes and cadavers, oh my. But back to the original sentiments regarding the ways in which we humans observe and reckon with the passage of time, its indications and manifestations, and how we turn blue when witnessing dissolution and decay, the fading away of things once bright and beautiful and energized. We recognize that from chaos order emerges, but only at the behest of a conscious agent that infects willful energy into the mix. And later, without it, everything gradually melts and melds back into the natural, which in many stages takes on rather chaotic and diseased appearances, the rotting wood and peeling paint of a rickety shutter blowing open, then closed repeatedly for years in the hot sun. Dead cattle in the field, bodies now going through stages, having given up their own ghosts. Moo, no doubt en route to that special and lonesome corner of the universe on which we spied so much earlier scratch that, later in this current work, the cold, dark corner of blackness where the souls of cows converge, I'm sure. No infinite green meadows for them. Ah, here it comes, the black corner as I'll label it, the forthcoming snippet of solitude and silence, a lugubrious lull of the lachrymose, trudging into the tenebrous and written long before, but editing and revision pushed it down below, until forgotten about and then remembered, late or misremembered as it were, such that I found myself thinking it aft when it was still fore. The black corner. And while evidence of someone taking the utmost care over their house, yard or life is truly inspiring and heartwarming, the absence of that, especially when it had been so pronounced and prominent before, can be a bit of a dull punch to the solar plexus, almost quite literally knocking the breath or ruach, or indeed spirit, right out of you. The wind, if you will. Perhaps such jabs to the gut and soul are but a veiled foreshadow, a subconscious encounter with the forces of inevitability that appear to rule the physical universe. Like a glimpse into some impossibly remote corner of the cold, dark cosmos where infinite entropy has held sway ceaselessly since ever there was an ever or aware, where no thoughtful gardener's touch or breath or mind had come within billions of light years of the place. Left alone, with no conscious creative energy injected to generate and then maintain order, things tend to fall into disarray. Heat dissipates, molecules distribute, things spread out. Which is why every post-apocalyptic movie features endless footage of the ruin and detritus of civilization in the form of overgrown lawns, broken shutters, tall weeds in streets where cars were left, abandoned, shattered glass and whatnot, obviously in the midst of a stage of entropy, chaos creeping in, order to disorder, depressing, sad. Only images of what once was, which is usually fairly depressing anyway, all those photos of other lives, stacks of forgotten papers with forgotten words at the bottom of forgotten boxes, corners crushed and stale smelling, reminders of 1,000 meant-to-dos and whatabouts. Forensic evidence of your own mysteries waiting to be skimmed through once, then shuttled off to the black corner of the universe. Say hello to the cows. But then again, if you wait long enough, through all the myriad stages of decay and chaos becoming incarnate, where order crumbles and disappears completely, you get past the awkward uglies, the goofy-looking floppiness that consciousness departed alone can spur, rusty hubcaps and dusty Sprite bottles and such, and unnecessary structures housing no one but ghosts of no one's imagination. And once those have all been surpassed and absorbed into the onrush of unguided existence, true nature finally emerges, again, and the chaos swirls and swirls until patterns form and symmetry appears and balance teeters only minimally and maybe even stabilizes. Suddenly, beauty is everywhere. The meadows bloom, the canyons echo with the rushing wind, the breath of the universe. There are Fibonacci spirals everywhere, in seashells, ocean waves, spider webs. The golden ratio is not that order from chaos itself. Fractal spirals of Romanesco broccoli in whirlpools, pine cones, sunflower heads, if you look real close, and hurricanes, all the way up to spiral galaxies. So I suppose the trick is, like most things, if you witness something in a mid-stage on the downward spiral, so to speak, to quote a Nin song about the same topic but with much more of a terse and graphic treatment, it may get a little bleak and disheartening, but wait a while, like a few million years, and things will start to shape up. Ordo ab Chao, novus ordo seclorum.